What's going on, everyone? Today I got a battle report for you. It's a WTC tournament round 1. I am playing Beast Herds versus my opponent Pantarek, who is playing Undying Dynasty. And so up on the screen, I'll show you my army list. And this is a new army that I picked for this tournament. It's a bit of a gamble, I would say. On my previous tournament, that was the Wings Who Ate My Wings tournament. Played an opponent, Just Flow, and I really absolutely loved his list. It was more like a very how do you say, finesse list. It didn't have any over the top characters. They were all supporting characters, and they were really designed just to buff up his rank and file. And they hit hard as nails. It looked like a fun list. I really enjoyed playing against it. And so I thought, well, let me see if I could do something similar for my Beast Herd army. So what I did is created 3 soothsayers. 2 are Wizard Adepts, and 1's a Wizard Master. The Wizard Master, I went with Druidism, and for the others, I went Evocation and Shamanism. I think each one of those lores. I'm not too fond of individually, but each one of them has some really nice spells. And the one thing I did deviate from that whole supporting characters list is I went with the Minotaur Warlord, and I really like that Minotaur Warlord. He's so killy and just so fun to play. But in retrospect, I think the better choice would have been, for this style of list, would have been to drop the Minotaur Warlord and go with a Beast Chieftain, or maybe even a Centaur Chieftain. Centaur Chieftain is a little bit more expensive, but man, some of the movement that he has give him BSB, and also the totem of greater totem bearer, and that'll allow me to actually continue to add buffs to my units. I think that would have been the smarter play, but sometimes that Minotaur Warlord is just so tempting. That said, I went more rank and files this go around. I added a unit of Mongol herds, first time I've used them, and I went with a unit of 22 longhorns. Again, the first time I used them since I started playing the Beast Herd army. I dropped my Minotaurs from 7 to 3, and my Razor Toss from 6 to 4, and that was necessary to add the longhorns. Now, I was even considering dropping Minotaurs altogether, but my Minotaur Warlord is not very, tanked up. Hits really hard, and I think he has really good combat. He could get a Resilience 6 if necessary with that wild form armor. But there's just, given that he's not always running around with a 6, there's just a lot of spells that could actually bring him down. And so the idea is to put him into that unit, and even though, even though he can be singled out, still is going to require dissipation on most shooting and most spells. So I think I'm okay with them there. And that's kind of the reason why I went with the Minotaurs, so I could throw them in there to a banner of speed just to get them in a little bit faster if necessary. And then I did the 2 Cyclops. I found the Cyclops to be probably one of the key parts of my army. Every time I take them, I know people don't really like Cyclops, but every time I take them, they've been a key factor in the games. Either by giving me missile support or just by being able to get that stomp attacks that are really necessary. Alright, so when I look at his army and I pair up my general versus his general, his general's pretty tough. I think I think if he would to hit me first, then I'm in a lot of trouble. But or he gets, but he has a great weapon, so I'll be striking fast. There's a good chance that I will be killing him. I calculate to cause about maybe 5 wounds on him on my first round. So I think from combat wise, if I'll go first with my Minotaur Warlord, and I'll definitely kill him. Now if he doesn't pair up against my Warlord, then I am in a lot of trouble. When it comes to rank and file, as long as he doesn't pair up his elite against my regular guys, I should be fine. Especially if I could get a Cyclops for support, I'll definitely be winning the combats there. So I'm not too scared. I think the things that really get me a bit nervous is his magic. He's going to definitely out-magic me. Even though I have 3 wizards, he's just going to have a lot more dice, and his spells are not super hard to cast, and he's able to cast the spell multiple times, which means he's going to get the spells that he wants off. the catapults I think are going to be my biggest concern. The good, when it comes to matching up my Cyclops and trying to take out his catapult, I think the Cyclops have a pretty good chance of taking him out. I looked at the casket. I'd love to take out this casket, but with 6 wounds, toughness of 6, I'm only going to be hurting it if I get if I hit it with the with my original. But the way my catapults have been, I tend to always hit on the partials. Even though I get 1 wound off, it's still a partial, and I don't really get those D3s. And if he has range, so during deployment, if he puts himself substantially out of my range, he's a good chance of him actually getting my Cyclops before I could get to his catapults. So I think that's going to be the biggest risk there. So so as long as I stay with that strategy, I think I'm okay. I don't have to be super aggressive. But again, I'm going. But as long as I think as long as I'm somewhat aggressive, or a little, not aggressive, but a little bit more on the charge, I think I'll be okay. But here's the deal. I'm the team captain, as I kind of mentioned before. I got paired up against UD on our ranking. Now, this go around, we weren't too confident with our pairings. We had a lot of yellow, which means we expect a lot of low scores. And what I mean by low scores is a 10-10 or close to that. And so far, I was one of the last players to play in my round, and our team was off of their pairing. I think it was only our Warriors of the Dark God against Inferno Dwarves and myself, and these other ones kind of flip-flopped. Our Demon Legion guy won, and our Saurian Ancient lost. And here he did have a minor loss. So my thought was, I think when I calculated it, we were up a little bit on points still. So if I go in with if I get a tie or a slight victory, we're in good shape. Or even if I get a low below score, as long as CT Prime scores a little bit higher, we're okay. So I'm not really going to go into the play by play. I'm going to try something different. Talk a little bit about the strategy, the thought process, and the play that happened throughout the game. And I think Sun Tzu says it best. He says, a strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is a noise before defeat. Now, I will say, I did have a strategy, and I did have tactics that I had, and I kind of mentioned that in the previous slide. But I think shortly after deployment and realizing that the catapults were out of range for my Cyclops, and the casket was the closest one, and just seeing how it was really messing up my magic, and how it just allowed him to have so much control of magic. On top of that, I inched up 6 inches, thinking, well, that's the closest thing I'll hit, and I'll move the next round to the catapult. But I got it down to maybe 1 to 2 wounds on that round, and I lost focus at that point. After that point, he on his turn healed up his casket back up to 2 points shy of full health. And instead of me moving over and continuing to attack his catapult, I turned around and focused again on his casket, thinking that now, since I had a good round the first round, thinking I was going to have something comparable the second round, and I did not. I didn't cause a single wound, and he was able to heal it back by the third round. And I just kind of just stayed in that corner. I knew that he was going to pick the hillside, and my pre-analysis, I said, well, if I could hide from the, I believe that I could hide from the casket, or at least only one unit would be exposed. But if he tried to get the max 6x6, my thought was, well, he would have to hit me. He'd be wounding me on a 4+, a 5+, right? So he'd be hitting me on 5s, wounding me on 4+, 5+ actually. But he actually had a pretty good tactics. He definitely used the synergy of his magic really, really well. He had evocation and also divination. But his evocation was what he used best, and he used Whisper of the Veils to weaken the unit that he was going to target with the casket, and took my toughness down to 3. And now he was wounding me on 4+. And when he's in every unit on the 4+, that's a good amount of units that are going to get wounded. And given that the Wildhorns don't have any armor save, I'm just getting wounded left and right. He's causing panic on 1 wound, and he was able to force panics on several of my units, causing them to flee off the tabletop. So the real thought there is, and he did that for 6 rounds, and I just caddied up, and finally when he got close enough, and I kind of started finally pushing out towards the 5th round, it just was too little, too late. It was, my magic just had no synergy. I went in there and picked combat buffs, magics, spells, and I didn't try to get engaged in the hand-to-hand combat, and he himself, so I didn't try to get combat. I didn't have the spells, the long range spells. I only had 1, and because I only had 1, he only had to worry about 1, and was always ready to dispel it when I was casting it. So I couldn't even cast that to get the casket damaged. Yeah, so I mean, lesson learned. Even though I say strategy without tactics, I did have one, but when you abandon it in the middle of the game, it wasn't an opportunity. It was a diversion from what I knew I had to do to win the game. So anyhow, lessons learned. All right, moving on to the final game points and the post-game analysis. It's a major loss. 18-12, Undying Dynasty wins over the Beast Herds. It's I think in the end of the day, abandoning my strategy was the key reason why I lost. I'm not taking away anything from Panarek. He was a great player. He had a great list, but I really wasn't scared of any unit that he had. There wasn't anything he was going to stomp over. I just decided to hide in the corner and try to get rid of the casket, and I knew that the casket was going to be very hard to kill, and instead of me just sitting there and going for that, since that was the closest target, and what was causing my magic to be a bit crippled, I should have just gone out. I should not have cornered up, and I should have been aggressive. I think even my opponent kind of said at the end that he expected me to be more aggressive, and I think this list is just not that type of list. I think going for ties. I did mention in the beginning that I do, when I'm conservative, I do better, but I don't know. I think I went ultra conservative, and that was too much, and I just kind of allowed him. There was another time where I went ultra conservative, and it had the same result. Allowing my opponent to pick who he was going to shoot at, who he was going to engage, and just sitting there and trying to have my Cyclops take out. It's just not the right strategy. I also really didn't have synergy with my magic. My magic assumed hand-to-hand combat, and I sat in the corner, hoping that he would make a mistake and come into my charge range, and he just didn't do that. So there's that. Yeah, in retrospect, I am still excited about this list. It is a finesse list. It does require a lot more understanding than some of my other lists. A lot more synergy, and I think I really learned a lot. And definitely, did some post analysis and some post strategizing, and realized I should, deployment could have been better, and I think I should have done that in the past. Had I focused on putting pressure on his catapults and with my Cyclops, I think. And then putting pressure on this rank and file, I think I would have done a lot better. So anyway, this is it for this battle report. Alright folks, if you like this battle report, please hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next video.